Hello, 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 hello. Good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. And so, all right, I'm just give it a few more seconds and then I'm gonna get started. I'm just answering an email. So bring a friend, tell a friend, bring a friend. If you want to get paid to get on corporate stages, I'm not talking about the pity partypreneur stage. If you really want to learn how to get paid to actually speak, because there's too many people doing that kind of crap out there. I learned how to get paid to speak. Okay. If you really want to get paid to speak, the first thing you're going to have to understand is you're going to have to get on corporate stages. So bring a friend, tell a friend that I will probably not do this again anytime soon. I will do this a one and done moment on teaching you how to be able to get paid to get on corporate stages. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I am multitasking at the same time. I got a ton of emails I have to answer and I have to get through today. All right. So you want to quote unquote be a speaker. You want to quote unquote be a thought leader. You want to be up there in the limelight. You want to know what it's going to take for you to actually finish, stop doing this for free and stop taking opportunities out of share, just doing it for exposure. You want to learn how to get paid to do what you do best and to do it most effectively. The main thing is, before I do anything else, before I talk about anything else, you got to understand this. It's where you speak that matters. It is not that you speak that matters. It is where you speak that matters. Most people have this idea that getting paid to speak means that when there is a call for speakers, you're going to either apply to it, or you're going to respond to it, and then you're going to tell them how much money you want, and then you're going to go back and forth, and then suddenly you're going to get paid to speak. Well, the answer is no. That's not quite how it happens. You have to know that if that engagement is not a corporate engagement, more than likely they're going to ask you to volunteer your time. And so if you get into the corporate level stuff, you're going to realize that number one, the price is higher. Number two, the audience has been vetted. And number three, in order for you to speak, you have to have some type of honorarium. It's not like you have to volunteer, but you have to have a price. And for those of you who have been used to getting this little $400, $500, $1,000, like this is a talk that I'm really going to shift your perspective. There's no such thing that is called broke money. That's a tip. You can get a tip for $1,000, but I haven't gotten paid $1,000 in a long time, because if you're on corporate stages, those corporations have a budget that is set aside just for their engagements, just for their any type of learning objectives for their people. So you're going to find yourself in a position where you're going to have to understand that corporations, they have the money, but you have to learn how to ask for it. So first and foremost, understand that the corporate environment is much different than the practice level environment. You've got to put yourself in that alignment. This is corporate stuff. That's why I said bring a friend, because that corporate stuff is so much different than the alignment of being in the practice level circuit. The corporate stuff is going to mean that here you are going to, let's just say Samsung, I'm just looking at a Samsung something, or Dell, or you're going to have to learn how to speak at HP or whatever it is. You're going to have to learn how to be ready to be in those spaces. Number one, your keynotes are going to be shorter. Your breakout sessions are going to be shorter, but your message is much more defined. So before I get started, I'm going to give you something that's like a grain of salt with some alcohol in it and a cut in a wound that's going to hurt. You've got to get ready to get out of spaces where you're used to being celebrated if you want to get paid to speak. I think that the main reason so many speakers, quote unquote, go from training to book to thing to find out how to get paid to speak is because they really want to know how they can, hello, Miss Simonia, they really want to know how do they get out of the spaces that have been celebrating them. And so what I mean by that is, I think I've shared it here, but I share it anywhere else I go. I don't speak at public events anymore. I haven't done it in years, and I'm not going to do it. It's like against the law in my office. And what that means is I don't speak at events where you pay and you get in. That's not what I'm doing anymore. I'm only speaking at places where the audience has been vetted, and that's how I run my company. The reason why is because I'm no longer speaking in places where people know my name. Let's call it Cheers, where everybody knows your name. I want to speak in places where people don't know me. Most of you are speaking in places, hello, Jennifer. Most of you are speaking in places where everybody already knows your name. They already know your message. And then you're trying to get people to pay you based on the message they've already heard. And so when you get out of spaces that people are only in it to celebrate you, what you'll find is that you will get the big bucks because you are in places where people really want the information that you have. They're not going to be cheering for you from the moment that you walk in, like, oh my gosh, here goes Carol, I couldn't wait to see her. No, no, no. This is, I hope this is good. This better be good. And that helps you to grow and be worldwide, instead of those of you who are kind of stuck in your geographic area. If you want to get out of that and grow worldwide, you've got to get out of these places where you're only going to places and speaking where you are celebrated. That's why I don't speak at public events any longer, because some of those people had already had access to me at a different time, and they're either going to come because of me or because someone else that they know is going to be there. That is not me building a business. That's me aligning myself with more friends. I have to be in places where my growth potential is there, so my earning potential goes up, my growth potential. And in corporate settings, your growth potential helps you to grow and be more valuable in corporations. The reason I have had such, and I'm not here to brag, but the reason I've had such success in the corporate space is because I don't speak in the public space. I strictly speak in certain spaces where I can get the most amount of bang for my buck. And so get to these areas of understand that you've got to speak in spaces where you're not celebrated. You strictly got to go to places where no one knows your name. Go to the corporate sector. Go to places where people are looking for experts like you. Go to places where people need to hear your name. The second thing I'm going to warn you about before you actually go into the corporate speaking sector is there are 3 things you must never do in the corporate sector that don't work. See, in the public sector, this works, but in the corporate sector, it doesn't. There are 3 things you need to know, and you can write this down. You can go back and forth and listen to this over and over. I'm multitasking as I'm going to you. 3 things you need to know. Number 1, numero uno, we don't talk about 3 things. We don't talk about race, we don't talk politics, and we don't talk religion. Get those 3 out of your mind. You can't be broke and then put people's religion on the stage while you're talking politics. Like, you can't be doing that. If you speak in the public sector, if people who already agree with you, that works. It's good. We can talk about God all day. I'm a woman of beliefs. I cannot, I can't. I could do that. Like, I can't shy away from who I am. But when I'm in a corporate sector, I have no idea who I'm talking to. I don't know those thousands of people who are standing in front of me. So here I am wanting to give away what I believe. And I believe that you should be a Democrat, conservative, and you should praise God in the Episcopalian church. No. Take that out. Take that. Some of you have to learn how to neutralize yourself. You've been so used to being on the praise stage where everybody likes you and everybody knows you and everybody likes what you say, that when you get into the corporate space, you are shuttered out by saying things that are just normative to what you believe. You can't grow that way. You got to learn how to neutralize it. I've been criticized tons of times where people say, I heard you say universe in other places. Yes, in places where I'm getting paid, we're talking universe. In places where I'm not getting paid, I'm talking about God. How about that? You don't like it? Go. If you're not in the room with me, you wouldn't understand it. I don't know who I'm speaking to. I'm going to be in an audience full of 10,000, 15,000 people. I'm getting paid a high dollar amount. The event coordinator might be Jewish. The guy in the back is Muslim. The guy on the other side is a non-believer. Here I am talking about what I believe. That doesn't work in the corporate sector. So you got to get that foundation out of your mind. You're going corporate. You decide you want to get paid. That is going to come with some neutralization in your message. You can't take what you've done in the public for $500 and go into the private sector. Into the corporate sector for $15,000 doing it the same way. You've got to learn that there's going to be different stages, different levels of messaging, and you got to learn how to play with that. You cannot do politics, race, and religion in corporate settings. You don't know who you're standing in front of. In a week, I am doing the opening address at Facebook headquarters. Do you think I can go, and God told me, and he said, I can't do that. Like, I don't know who these people are. I'm going to be in San Francisco in front of Sheryl Sandberg and the rest of them, and I'm doing my God thing. Now, I know Sheryl Sandberg is Jewish. How would that look? So you can't be wrong and be broke at the same time. You've got to learn how to neutralize your message. There's some of you who you're so stuck in it because you rehearsed it so many times. You can't be that kind of person. Yeah, you can only do that on Christian stages. You can't do that. But again, sometimes we overlap language into different settings, and then we want to know why we're not getting paid to go into other settings, because you can't get paid when you use what you use over here to go over there. You got to be careful that the messaging doesn't conflate where you are. And then lastly, before we get into how you get in, the main thing is, and I know that somebody had actually sent me an email about this, about why do I wear certain colors on stage? You see that, and this is not any offense to any of you, I love you, but you see, you can't wear your church clothes to the corporate stage. So you can't wear all these patterns and flufferys. And I would love to show you an email that I received from this corporation that I did some work for about what they wanted as far as dress, meaning keep it straight. You know, keep the dress straight, meaning one color. Like you can't put on the big flower thing and the thing and the pantyhose and the big, like you can't wear your church clothes. You may not like what I just said, but you just can't do it. And I see too many people with a big bow right here all up in on your face. And then you want to know why it's like, it's not working. Because they're going to video this stuff. A lot of times these are things that are kept in archive. You may not be able to use the footage, but it's critical that you understand the difference between dressing for the practice level space, that maybe that is accepted, and the corporate space where one color works it all. So a lot of my dresses and a lot of my pantsuits are in one color. You don't see what I'm wearing, but you have no idea why I'm wearing it. I'm muting out certain things because the thing is, a lot of event coordinators tell you, look, the backdrop of this is going to be red. So they'll say the backdrop is going to be red. Please don't wear anything red. Please don't wear anything with splice and splice. And then they have this thing called media ready, meaning when you go do the news, I've done the news a few times. When you go to do the news, the first thing they always tell you is please don't wear pinstripes and please don't wear any shapes that they cannot film. And then I remember one time I was watching the news and someone wore pinstripes and I finally saw what they meant by it. It has a way of skewing on camera. And so sometimes you're looking at it and you look like you feel dizzy. They want you to be media ready. So you have to learn, look, I'm not asking you to go and change your entire wardrobe, but what you wear to church and what you wear for your going to the bar or whatever it is you do with the big flowers and the big chains with the 15 different links, that works in the public sector. That's fine. But when you go to the corporate sector, it may have a little bit of a connotation like, okay, we're just trying to stick to the point. And there's some distractions all around you, especially the neck pieces and, you know, the weave all the way down to your ankles, or the nails with the diamond and the that works in some sectors. And I'm not criticizing it. It's just that it may not work in this sector. So now that we've gotten all the housekeeping rules out of the way, let's talk about how you get paid. First and foremost, you need a message that corporations need. There are tons of messages that corporation needs, but the two messages they don't need motivation and they don't need empowerment. You got to figure out another way to do it. What I mean by that is those are very generic terms in the corporate sector. Like how much motivation you need, like how much more empowerment that you need. That works in the public sector where people love to come and cry on your shoulder. That's cool. But when you're working privately, you have to get specific. What do you empower people to do? What do you motivate them to do? Get specific. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not an empowerment speaker. What do I specifically solve? Because you're coming there because you're being paid to solve a specific problem. So event coordinators normally talk to you about what they're what their deliverables are going to be. And then you have to kind of backtrack them into figuring out, now that I know what my deliverables are going to be, you have to kind of back it into what do I need to talk about? And that's what you're going to call yourself. Some of you have either way too many labels or just this generic label. You got to be specific, but not so widespread. I'm not an empowerment and a this and a founder and a that. That's way too much. If they can't pronounce it in 3 sentences, three words or less, it's going to be too much. And it can't be too short where it's just very generic. You got to get specific, but be specific and short and to the point. So they don't need a motivation and they don't need your empowerment. This may cause a lot of spinning in your mind, but you're so used to just saying, I want to empower people to, or I want to motivate people to, that you don't realize that there's something specific in there that you have to get to. And if you don't get to that, you will not be hired, because there's a difference between being booked and being hired. Being booked means that you don't get paid. Being hired means you're hired to do something. And so people don't hire people who they don't know is not going to solve a problem. So learn how to solve a specific problem. They don't need motivation, and they don't need empowerment. Oh, and the third thing, they may not need business coaching either. You're walking into a company that may be doing $10 billion worth of revenue. You're talking about you're a business coach. Like, you can't, can I really go there with you with that? Because I don't really want to. But you're doing $100 a week and you're going to go and do business coaching? Like, really, straighten that out. Some of you business coaches can't do business coaching on a corporate level because you're not really a business coach, because this company is up and running and you're still doing this out your house. Like, you got to be really specific about what problem do you solve. When you're so used to solving these generic problems, you have these generic terms like, I'm a business coach and I'm going to go empower you to be able to be motivated. Like, really? You're going to show Michael Dell how to start a business? You're going to go show Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett how to start? Like, really? Are you going to do that today? I want to see you try. It's not going to work. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work. So you got to be specific. What problem do you solve? And I'm sure there's a problem in there that you solve, but you've gotten so used to just saying, I solve all business problems, that you have a hard time kind of defining what the problem is. So figure out what problem do you solve. The second thing is, you've got to stop focusing on social media and focus on relationships. Stop focusing on social media and start focusing on relationships. I said this a few days ago in another stream that's somewhere below here. There may be only 10 to maybe 15 real event coordinators. You got to know all of them, because that one event coordinator may be the event coordinator for 20 different types of events for 20 different companies. So here you are focusing on getting 30,000 likes, and you're missing the opportunity to make one phone call. You understand the process between that? So I haven't built this Facebook page in a while, and there's a reason why. This is not where my audience is hanging out. I'm hanging out with the event coordinator who's hanging out on LinkedIn. So I'm having a relationship with them there, and I'm nurturing that relationship. The thing is, I can't nurture that relationship if I'm busy here nurturing an audience, because you guys are not, no offense, but you guys are not coming to my events. So I have to nurture where the event coordinator is, who already has the vetted content and the vetted contacts for me to be able to get on those stages. You got to nurture the relationships. Some of you go to too many social media conferences learning how to get your numbers up, but if the numbers are not equating to more opportunity, then you really need to work on the relationships. Because when people get to know you and they are in relationship with you, they recommend other places you can go and speak, or different events that they think are a better fit for you. And they put that good word in, and that helps you to be able to grow. For example, I've only come back from Vegas maybe 3 weeks ago. I was the opening keynote for the American Staffing Association. 30,000 people were in attendance. My session probably had about a third of that, maybe 9,000 to 10,000 people. Great event. How did I get that opportunity? When people like to ask me, who did I pitch to? I didn't pitch to anybody. Here's a relationship. I had coffee with a woman about a year and a half ago. Yeah, about a year and a half ago. I had coffee with a woman a year and a half ago that I wanted to build a relationship with, because she was doing something very similar in my space. We had coffee that morning, and then it just so happened that October, because I remember I went to New York, and when I came back, I had to go to this event locally where I live. In October, we happened to see each other at an event that I spoke at, but I didn't know I was the headliner of this event. I walked in thinking I was one of the speakers. I was the first speaker. So when I saw her there, we hugged. We were like, girl, we got to connect, and this and the other. We were just talking. So I'm the opening speaker. I knock it out the park. Okay, cool. I get off the stage. I didn't see her when I was getting ready to leave, because I literally had to go from there to something else. So I left, and I sent her an email, because I've been nurturing that relationship for a while. She had a direct relationship within the American Staffing Association. She recommended me to them for them to be able to hire me to come and speak. So when I got the phone call, I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, good. And I'm just thinking this is just an organic relationship. She was like, you know, such and such. And I said, yeah. She was like, ironically, we called her looking for additional speakers to do our women's event. And that's how she gave us your information. That would not happen if I'm focusing on getting 10,000 friends and 10,000 likes. That wouldn't have happened. That happened because I had coffee with someone who then was in the right space when I was there. And then we hugged and we continued to nurture that relationship. And I had no idea that she's talking about me outside of my presence. You need to build relationships in a way where people are consistently talking your name when you're not in their presence. And so when you build those relationships, people start recommending you and referring you to things that you've never thought were possible. And they're not asking anything more of you than for you to continue to be the person that they met you being. Many of you are just focused on, put out a post, let's work this algorithm, figure out if the algorithm, like you're so focused on this that you don't have the relationships, and now people don't hire you. All they want to do is ask you to volunteer. And if you want to go into the corporate space, you're going to have to nurture certain relationships. And also in that, this is part B of point number 2, you're also going to have to learn how to get on LinkedIn a little bit more and be active. Some of you have these stale LinkedIn profiles and you're like, well, people don't connect with me there. They don't talk back. They're not supposed to. They're watching you. And if you're inconsistent on LinkedIn, I guarantee you your speaking business will not take off, especially in the corporate sector. In the public sector, yeah, you'll always take off. But in the corporate sector, you will die really quickly because that's where the corporations are. The names of the people who are the decision makers are all on LinkedIn. So you're missing out on an opportunity for you to grow and financially be successful because you are worried about people responding, or you spent so much time trying to figure out how to get your social media credibility up that you've ignored the place where they really are hanging out. And because you're not in their wavelength, you're not even there, you don't see how important it is. Like somebody had thinged me on Twitter the other day, and I'm looking, joined in 2009. This is 2019, and only have 110 friends because you're so busy focusing on how to get your numbers up on some other social media platform that you've ignored the social media platforms that are going to bring you the executive presence in corporate sectors. So nurture the relationships. I'm not saying forget about the numbers, but the numbers are only important if this is where you really want to speak and hang out. But the numbers are not as relevant when you go into the corporate sector because it's the power of the message that they're really looking for. They're not looking for the numbers necessarily. So you gotta focus on building the relationships, and you gotta focus on just really creating content that is relevant to LinkedIn, and it doesn't have to restream here. Most of you who are not connected to me on LinkedIn, that's cool, but you will notice that my social media presence on LinkedIn is completely different than here. I am not even saying half the things that I say on LinkedIn. I don't bring it here because this is not where my tribe is hanging out. Got it? Last, your fees have to represent that you want to be in the corporate sector. You know, the $1,500 speaker, that's not it. The $2,000 speaker, that's not it. The $5,000 speaker, that's not it. Like, you're getting there at 5, but you're not there. When you decide to put, you know, a 5-figure number up there and slap it up there, and then you back it into where you got and justified your fees from, you really start backing people into, wow, there's something valuable there. Like, there's something really, really, really valuable there. If you keep saying I'm a great corporate speaker, oh, let me also drop this in here. Not only do your fees have to say it, but your bio must say it as well. Some of you keep calling yourselves corporate speakers. You don't have to say that. You don't have to say that at all. You don't have to say I am a corporate speaker or anything like that, but then your fees got to represent where you want to be. If you're still charging $1,000 for a talk, that's because you're playing around on Facebook. If you're still charging $500 a talk, you're still working around on your personal page on Facebook. You're still sending out flyers from Fiverr.com and putting it on Facebook. That's the reason why you're still here. If you want to play on the $10,000 and $20,000 stage, you've got to focus on LinkedIn, and you got to stop calling yourself a corporate speaker. Whenever I see that, I'm just like, that's a bunch of crap. The reason why is because you don't ever have to call yourself a corporate speaker. I am a corporate speaker. No. Tell me what you do. And then the corporations start coming, but you got to nurture the relationship on LinkedIn. but you also have to have fees that represent where you want to be. So let me be clear. If you're still charging $1,500 and calling yourself a corporate speaker, you're not a corporate speaker. Like, just kill that idea. And I'm here to be honest with you, because I think too many people fluff it up and act as though, just tell people you're a corporate speaker. Why would you need to do that? Does Serena Williams say I'm a tennis player on her LinkedIn page? She's just like, great athlete. That's it. Simple. Simplify your life a little bit. Don't call yourself a corporate speaker. That's the dumbest language I've ever heard. That's like saying I'm a book writer and an authoress, and I've written books. I speak. That's it. Be simplistic. And then your fees need to say, when someone gets access to your fees, it needs to speak as though, oh shucks, wait a minute, that's not an ordinary speaker. That's somebody who's in really the corporate sector, that they have the budget for that kind of stuff, so that nobody's playing the I'm playing with you game in that respect. So when you're charging $1,500, $2,000, that kind of money, you're playing. Like you kind of want it, but you're not really serious about it. What you really are is like, you're into it right now, but you're not like, you got to be really like, you got to be careful what you charge, because you might be afraid, because going back to your practice levels and going back to the public sector, you're so used to being rejected in the public sector that you soften your ask in the corporate sector. I don't soften it. I'm very aggressive in the corporate sector, because I know you have the money. You're a $10 billion company, and here I don't want to ask for $500, you know. I'm not sure. You know, I'll do it for free because it's Dell. Like, you're crazy. You need to ask for what you're worth. And if you're still asking for $1,000, that's your intimidation from being rejected by people who already didn't have the money. Two things you need to look for when you're about to charge what you're about to charge. Sorry, I have mints all over my mouth. The first thing you need to look for is who's sponsoring this event, if they are sponsoring it. And the second things that you need to look for are who are the other presenters who are soon to be in attendance. You may not have as much time to ask all of those introductory questions, so you have to do some of your due diligence on your own. Unlike the public sector, where people can go back and forth and answer this, you may have 15 minutes and one shot to be able to talk to someone. So you got to make sure you got all of your ducks in a row and know. But if your fees are still in the practice level arena, you're not going to make it. The thing is, you get what you pay for. And in the corporate sector, a lot of times event coordinators feel, I'm just giving you an example, they feel as though at $1,500, I'm not getting what I paid for. I've seen so many speakers go on stage and and I remember Steve Harvey said it best. You have to look at those people who are not doing well up there, and you know how much they got. You're just like, uh-oh. And I've seen people like, I hate to see the word bomb, but they bombed up there, and you knew that that was the $1,500 person in the room. You knew that that was a $2,000 person in the room. You kind of knew it because they didn't take a lot of time to understand where they were getting themselves into. And then they kind of changed things around as they went along. So your fees need to, when you're starting at 5 and working your way northward, you're kind of serious. When you get to 7 and work your way northwards, I know you know what market you're in. And the thing is, you don't ever want to get to your full fee and then stop. You have to ask for more than you really want, and then negotiate your way back into what you really deserve. Because the thing is, if you say, I want $5,000, non-negotiable, you're holding them up for what reason? There's no determining if that's it. And what if you're shooting yourself in the foot? What if you said 15 and they came back at 7? You just got $2,000 more. Like, you missed out on an additional 2,000. What if, you wanted 5 and you said 20 and they gave you 10? You missed out on 5 because you're so like, I don't want to ask for nothing, because we've gotten this guilt around asking for money, because again, we're so used to being rejected. And so we kind of, we play with that number. As far as what's a good number to ask for, it's all based on what your effort looks like. Now, if your LinkedIn page, it sucks, and if you don't have any marketing collateral in the market, if you're still playing around with the Facebook type messages and putting them on LinkedIn, I can't tell you what to ask for. But if you straighten up your communication on LinkedIn, and if you straighten up what your bio is about and what your services you offer and everything else like that on LinkedIn, and really kind of populate certain circles on LinkedIn, then you can start, however you want to start. But if you're still at If you're still way below 2,000, you're kind of still in that practice phase, unless it's 2,000 across the street. Then I can say, you know, let that go. It's across the street. What do you know? You're not losing anything across the street if that's just environmental. Now, here's the thing. I also always advise people still somewhat stay in the practice level arena to keep practicing, because your messages get better with time and you don't have the time on the corporate level to ever practice. So if I want to practice, let's just say I want to test out a new message I'm working on for the confidence factor. I don't have the time to test it out in front of 10,000 people. I've got 100 people that are going to be at the local YMCA. I'm going to test that message out there. I'm not going to charge them for that because I know I'm using this as, will this work? When I said it out loud to the audience, how do they react? And I take notes based upon my own presentation, where I may not have that kind of time on stage. So you got to kind of determine, where do you stand on, you know, in your relationship building. Sometimes I think people get too aggressive with how much they charge, but they didn't think about what their marketing collateral says that they should charge for what they offer. So you got to look at your marketing collateral, see what it is, see where you can clean up things. Look at people who you really want to be like. Focus on the big celebrities. Don't focus on people like me. Focus on the big celebrities who are already doing it, and look at what they're doing and how they're showing up in the places you want to show up in. And also look at where they have spoken and what their bios look like. And that kind of gives you an idea of how much you should be charging if you can really get your marketing samples and your marketing ideologies to look similar. And it doesn't have to be a copycat. It just has to look like, if I want to be a $5,000 speaker, if that's good enough for you, how does that look? If I want to be a $10,000 speaker, how does that look for me? Because you got to put that out there. But your fees reflect what corporations think of you. Your fees reflect it big time. They will say, they will even ask you, so you charge $1,500, huh? I'll take that back to my committee and I'll get back to you. That's basically another way of saying no, because your fees reflect what you think of yourself. So you got to kind of fix that up a little bit. And my last point to you, and my last point ever about this, is you got to look for the companies that have real revenue and that may have internal events. And when I say internal, events that people can't get access to, because those kind of referrals are going to be the ones that are going to matter. Those referrals count. So I remember when I spoke at Inc., I remember a lady in there that came up to me afterwards and she was like, we're going to hire you to be able to speak at Tory Burch. And I was like, oh, okay. And then when I got home, I remember I saw her email, and she was the event coordinator for Tory Burch. So it's just that you got to kind of go into the internal kind of stuff. I didn't even know, I knew Tory Burch had a women's entrepreneurship thing, but I didn't know she had internal events for the company. You got to kind of get into those spaces where they already have, they have internal things that you can get into, because it's where your referrals are. You don't know who you're standing in front of, and that's why you got to avoid the three things that I told you. You got to avoid the race, the politics, and the religion, because you don't know who you're sitting in front of, and you got to make that huge, long-standing impact, because your next speaking gig is sitting in that room. Your next referral is sitting in that room. And for some of you who are only speaking so you can kind of convert into coaching, that's not my wheelhouse. But some of you who are just doing it to convert into coaching, this is kind of the way that I tell people why I had to quit coaching. This coaching dream is a bunch of nonsense, because it's too many. There are a lot of coaches, most of them underqualified. And I didn't want to play into that role. It was something I couldn't humanly do it anymore. I looked around and I said, there are a lot of people who are losing money, and they already don't have money, that are losing money behind coaches who can't give them the kind of advice that they need anyway. It's a matter of affordability versus accessibility, and I didn't really want to play into that. When you get into this corporate space, this is why you have to ask for what you're worth, because you're not going to be able to sell from the stage. You're just not going to be able to. If a company is giving you 20 grand to speak, they're not expecting you to be like, and so when you join my Coachingpreneur program at $19,000, they're not expecting you to do that. What they expect you to do is knock it out the park. And what you need to focus on, and this is, I'm not talking about this here today, my phone is going off. What you need to focus on is, when it's all said and done, you got to think retainer. I'm always about retainers. So what I'm trying to do is, instead of getting a coaching client, because I don't really want to sit on the phone and coach anybody into their own nonsense. I just don't. That's not who I am anymore. I don't know if age brought that on. I don't know if just being tired of the nonsense out here brought that on. But when you get a retainer after you've done a great job and you know you've done a great job and you've gotten that kind of confirmation and validation from whomever was in the room that the job was really great, you're going to kind of really start negotiating for a retainer, which means that you can coach them. You don't want to coach individuals. I don't want to be responsible for individuals any longer. So you got to start thinking outside the box. It's not about selling. All of you who keep following these speakers with their, I'm going to sell you afterwards. It doesn't work in the corporate sector because they already said, how much do you really want? Did you really want to be able to speak for $1,000 and sell $20,000 worth of coaching programs and books? Or would you rather get the $20,000 up front and get a 2-year retainer out of us? Most often you don't get the retainer till you do the job. So you got to do it and knock it out the park. And once you knock it out the park, then you start talking in retainer language. And what retainers basically are is you're looking for information that you can be able to sell back to them to help their audience and to help their employees and to help them. There's a huge gap with regard to coaches who consistently try to get individuals versus those who are consistently trying to work with corporations. And this is where corporate coaching comes into play. That's how you get access to them. So you got to really start thinking about the one-on-one. I'm not feeding pennies any longer. And there's some of you who claim that you're not in coaching, but you're entertaining like you're in coaching. So you wouldn't have to be here if you're not like in coaching. You got to get out of that altogether. Like people should not even expect that out of you at all. You got to be like, you got to withdraw from that environment and the people who are in that environment, because it gets a little bit toxic because you have a message that doesn't belong on a small scale. So you got to eliminate that from the reservoir of what you're thinking. And that will help you to kind of grow your business model. This is business. It's not personal. But the corporate space has the money. The corporate space has the people. The corporate space has the finances. The corporate space has the reliability to be able to increase your credibility. I don't speak publicly because none of that stuff ever built my credibility. It means a lot more when I can say, I have spoken at United Healthcare, I have spoken at Inc., I have spoken at Forbes. Those things get me into the next door. So I don't have to pitch and put myself out there like that. I can really be strategic about what the things I say yes to and ignore all the other things that don't make sense, because I'm getting to a point in my life where I don't want to spend my time traveling and looking like I'm busy. That's a great look. But if you all understood how much time it takes to travel just to go get $500, I'm not working that hard. I'm a parent, I'm a wife. I don't want to work that hard. And I have other companies I've got to manage. I don't have the time to be on the road for absolutely nothing. So in order for me to make the best out of my time and whatever time I have, I want to make sure I'm being strategic, I'm being intentional, and I'm using my voice in places that matter and places that are going to help my brand to grow, because some of you are branding based on logos and there's some of us who are branding based on reliability and credibility. I don't need a logo, I just need credibility at this point. And you got to really focus on those things so that now people will contact you and know that you are not working for free. And that's simply it. Get into the corporate spaces. Ignore all of this fluffpreneur. You're just going on, I'm just going to be a speaker. I'm a speaker. It's a million of them out there. There's a million of them, but very few in the corporate space. And if you really want to get paid what you're really worth, the corporate space is the only place that has the budget that has the ability to pay you what you're really worth. And you'll be okay from there. All right. I got to go. I've been in here longer than I thought I would be. But if there's any questions, you can feel free to post them below. I'll be glad to answer at any time. But it's time for you. 2020 is the year. It's time for you to stop. I'm saying I'm going to be at this and I'm going to be at that. Now's the time to get out of it. Why are you still playing in this level? You got to get out of it. The money is not in the $25 event. The money is not in the $40 event. The money is not even in the $100 event. The money is where the commas are. And if you want to be able to add commas to your bottom line in 2020, you got to go where the commas are already existing, and you got to kind of grow from there. But in the meantime, hope you all enjoyed this, because I got to go. But at the end of the day, charge what you're worth. I'll see you guys soon.